I was having a conversation today with my sister about relationships, and this is going to be a pretty interesting subject. And we were talking about, trials and tribulations in relationships, in our relationships. And one of the interesting conclusions that we came to was that people would rather be, in general, sometimes you could be comfortable being alone, or you might prefer being alone. But oftentimes, for most people, if you see, they would prefer to be in a relationship, even if it's unhealthy, than to be in no relationship at all. So you'll see these toxic relationships, whether it's emotionally abusive relationships, physically abusive relationships, relationships filled with neglect and conflict and arguments and sexless relationships. And we've been trained since we've been young to require, and we do indeed require as humans, attachment in order for us to be able to survive and to be healthy. So at a certain point in our development, we had to sacrifice our own authenticity for the attachment to our caregivers. Because if you are fully authentic, then you might alienate the people who are actually taking care of you. And hence you put your own life at risk. This is what's actually going on psychologically and psychophysiologically. So you have to sacrifice who you are, conform to the group identity, to the identity of your family, to who they want you to be, so that you can actually be fed and be clothed and be taken care of and have shelter over your head, a roof over your head, and food on the table. And obviously, we are trained through reward and punishment as well. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and we internalize other people's dialogue. And first of all, that's a completely separate problem. I mean, it's connected, but it's a separate problem as far as us internalizing the dialogue of other people, and whether it's our family, our friends, television, our peers, and that becomes what we say to ourselves and what we think to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, and it becomes unconscious, and that's the most dangerous part of this whole thing. Everything becomes unconscious. So the way we feel about ourselves, the way we see the world, the way we interact with other people is primarily unconscious. And so that is a little bit frightening. It's a little bit frightening because sometimes you feel like you don't have any control over your own life. You're just acting out a program. So whether you have negative habits or positive habits, or people say, I am who I am, or I know who I am, or I am XYZ, without realizing that who you are and who you can be ultimately is something that is ever evolving, transforming, changing, becoming. And when you've decided that you've become something that is static, then you've kind of crystallized a belief system, a perceptual system, and it becomes less dynamic, and you're less able to understand, to learn and to understand not only about yourself but also about the world, and also how to integrate, new lessons into who you are at your core. Because there is an expression I heard, I don't remember who said this, I think it may have been Alex Hormozy, is that people question all of their beliefs except for the beliefs they truly believe. Right? The ones they truly believe, they never question at all. And I think the reason why, and I think there's a whole second part they're missing, which I think the reason why is because those beliefs are actually unconscious. We don't even know what they are. We can't even properly describe them sometimes. And sometimes people can come along in society and be able to verbalize what we've been feeling. And we say, yes, that makes sense. It's exactly what I'm feeling. And so tying all this back to relationships is the fact that the reason it's hard to exit a relationship is because we know that what this relationship is giving us somehow is more valuable than us being by ourselves. And another reason why we're afraid of being by ourselves, not only we've been trained to be attached to other people and to be in relationships, even if they're unhealthy, we would rather have an unhealthy relationship, because no human being has ever had every relationship be completely healthy. I don't believe that's happened. So not only is that occurring, but also the the fact that if you were alone, if you were not in a relationship, you would be forced to look inward and to find out who you are and what you want and how you need to change and how you need to heal, and what everything you need to work on within yourself. And when people don't do that, right? They do everything they can to point at the world and to basically shift the responsibility consciously or unconsciously to other things. And what happens is when you don't have all this external stimulation, you actually are forced to look at yourself, and it can become painful. That's why a lot of people, they don't want to be alone, because when they're alone, they actually engage in self-destructive behaviors, different types of addictions and vices. And that could be anything small. That could be things that are small and things that are large, right? Heroin, cocaine, alcohol, porn, um, food, YouTube, media, social media, right? You could see that we're always trying to take this energy that we have, this anxiety that we have, and distract ourselves. Because when we do that, either with other things or other people, it allows us to alleviate the pain of just being alone for a second and finding out what's really going on. It's really hard to just sit in that pain, because the problem is it's not important to sit in the pain as people say, but you have to know what to do. It's not just, oh, we'll be alone and meditate and or pray or whatever people say. They have to understand why are they doing it, and how can they get to the root of whatever they're trying to address, and how they can do that in a way that's productive and authentic, and actually excavate something of value that they can implement in their life. And so it's really a survival mechanism when you think about it. It's everything is fine keeping you, where you are, where it needs to be. We're chasing these chemicals in our brain, and then we find ourselves in a moment when we're disconnected from these things, or even in that moment when you're watching something, you know when you're engaging in some activity that you shouldn't, right? You've already gorged yourself and now you're eating more food, or you've already had, four drinks and you take a fifth one, a sixth one, or you've already been scrolling and now your brain is dead, it's numb, and you're continuing to stroll, and you can't even get that dopamine hit, but it's just you're locked in. You're locked into that activity, and it has a grip on you. It can't let you go. And it's not feeling right. Those are the moments when you disconnect, you feel the most emptiness, because you know that you could feel it in the moment that what you're doing is really an escape, because life isn't going so well, and so you want to find a way to make yourself feel better. And listen, it's completely normal. It's not abnormal. You shouldn't judge yourself for it. You shouldn't criticize yourself for it. Of course, it doesn't feel good, and there is an inherent sense of shame or guilt associated with those activities, or regret, and they could be really hard. But just by recognizing what they are and understanding that it is a part of the process of life in general, will allow you to put your mind in a place where you're not going to sink down into that and go further into a mental and an emotional state where now it's become completely all consuming and destructive, you know. So that's something to think about. And I after the conversation that I had with my sister about attachment, is I was making my tea, and I have this tea. I buy this tea called Yogi tea, and it has these on the tab of the tea bag. It has like a little blurb. It looks like this, right? Looks like this. You can see there's a message right there. And in fact, the one that I made right after I had the conversation is this. I don't know if you can see that. No, anyway, it says, "We can always start again." And I love that, because it's a reminder that even if you're having a shitty day or a shitty week, every moment is a chance to reset and to refresh your mind and to start again. And just knowing that, even if you can't do it, just knowing it is helpful. And that's why I espouse habits. If you do not develop the habits, then you cannot become something different. Becoming something different is not something you do one time. It's not a single breakthrough. I love Tony Robbins, but I don't believe the permanent changes in life just come from single breakthroughs. It's an accumulation of things. You might have that breakthrough, you have that perceptual shift, but you have to do things to reinforce the new experience that you had. Because if you don't do anything, then it's not going to do anything for you. So you have to be able to leverage the breakthroughs, the different perspective shifts by forming new habits around them so they can become a part of your life moving forward so that you can continue to progress. And that brings everything full circle for this video. So I hope that was helpful. Just kind of understanding certain things about your own experience, my experience, your experience, everybody's experience is can give you more clarity. You don't sometimes these videos, you don't always have to, you don't have to have an answer. You don't need an answer. Sometimes you just need things to be laid out in front of you. It's kind of like you're in the dark and somebody switches on a light and you see all the puzzle pieces. The puzzle isn't made, but at least you see the pieces and you know that they're there. And sometimes the pieces are a little bit more obvious as far as like how we put them together. And I've, shared, hopefully shared some insights with you tonight and that you can use. But this was really more of a philosophical or musing video for you to just kind of absorb and to reflect upon. And I think it'll be helpful because we're all struggling and going through the same things, and we'll have our ups and our downs. And even the people at the very top and people at the very bottom, they have the same emotions, right? They have the same spectrum of emotions that they experience. So just keep that in mind. And as long as you can crystallize certain patterns and habits and build your life in such a way where you're in an upward momentum, is like you build momentum going upwards, then you're going to still experience the same emotions, but you're going to have different experiences that are going to be associated with those emotions, and experiences that you're probably going to enjoy. So hope that was helpful. I'll keep it there, and wish you a good night, many blessings, and we'll talk soon.